Well, there's breaking news in the case against President Trump's former campaign chair, Paul Manafort, who was convicted of 8 criminal counts just last month in Virginia and now faces additional charges here in a court in Washington, D.C. Well, ABC News is reporting just tonight that, quote, Manafort has tentatively agreed to a plea deal with special counsel Robert Mueller that will head off his upcoming trial. That deals with the trial coming up, which was set to take place, as I said, this month. Well, that's according to sources familiar with the negotiations who say, quote, the deal is expected to be announced in court Friday, that's tomorrow, but it remains unclear whether Manafort has agreed to cooperate with prosecutors or is simply conceding to a guilty plea, which would allow him to avoid the stress and expense of trial. Reuters is also reporting that the possible deal is, quote, close but not there yet, and the special counsel's office is declining to comment. Separately, Trump attorney Rudy Giuliani suggested to Politico just last night that he's confident Manafort will not flip on Trump, saying there's no fear that Paul Manafort would cooperate against the president because there's nothing to cooperate about, and we long ago evaluated him as an honorable man. Joining me now is David Corn, Washington bureau chief for Mother Jones and author of Russian Roulette, a great book out there, this whole question of the Russia investigation. Paul Butler's a former U.S. attorney. I go directly to Mr. Butler. What does it mean to you when you hear this?
It means that Manafort is asking himself whether he gets a better deal from Donald Trump or Robert Mueller. If it's Donald Trump, that means that he's confident that Trump will pardon him, and then he pleads guilty in order to avoid the expense of a trial, a second trial, which would cost hundreds of thousands of dollars, in addition to the hundreds of thousands of dollars that he owes for the first trial. The other possibility is that he decides that he can't count on Donald Trump for anything, including a pardon. And so he makes a deal with Mueller. But Mueller says, what you got? Mueller isn't going to be willing to make a deal with Manafort unless Manafort can give him the goods on Donald Trump.
They've been spending a hair up to 5 hours now negotiating this. Is that what they're negotiating, what you got?
Yeah, I think so. Again, Mueller says something has to be in it for me. I know I have a strong case. We already convicted you of 8 felonies in Virginia. This is actually an easier case in D.C. because it's about failure to register as a lobbyist. You either did or you didn't. Mueller's saying you can go to jail for another 10 years or you can help us make our case.
And he can give him a break on the sentences he's already gotten, on the charges already found guilty of in Virginia.
Yeah, that's his case too. Yeah, so the prosecutors can make a recommendation.
Big bundle of thank you. Yes. You're reporting. What's Manafort know about Trump? Can you tell from your reporting, David?
Well, there are a couple of areas. I mean, he may know about stuff prior to the campaign, but during the campaign, we remember this guy named George Papadopoulos. Sure. George Papadopoulos says that it was Trump who okayed him reaching out to the Russians while the Russians were attacking the Democratic Party and attacking the election. And in one of the earlier filings in the case, it says that Manafort knew about that. So Manafort also sat in on the Trump Tower meeting, in which there was, if not collusion, an attempt to collude between Manafort, Jared Kushner, Donald Trump Jr., and a Russian emissary from the Kremlin. There's also a case of Donald Trump Jr. lying, putting out a statement about that meeting that Donald Trump now admits he dictated. This could be an obstruction of justice issue that Manafort might know something about.
What do you think of this, Paul? There's a lot of stuff. It affects the family. It affects the president. He could incriminate them all, potentially.
He could. So the question is how trustworthy he is, not as a witness. He's never going to show up in a federal courtroom, even before Congress, because he's damaged as a witness. But in terms of what information he has, again, the way it works is his lawyers, Manafort's lawyers, make a proffer. They say, this is what we would tell you. This is what we would testify to the grand jury if you give us a deal. And Mueller evaluates that and then decides whether there's enough in it for his side, for the special counsel, to go forward.
Well, Politico is also reporting that attorneys for Paul Manafort have been in touch with the president's legal team. That's according to Rudy Giuliani, who, quote, confirmed that Trump's lawyers and Manafort's have been in regular contact, and they are part of a joint defense agreement that allows confidential information to be shared between them. Well, Giuliani confirmed he spoke with Manafort's lead defense attorney shortly before and after the verdicts were returned in that Virginia trial a few weeks ago, but the former mayor wouldn't say what he discussed with the Manafort team. Back to you, Paul.
Once again, we see the Trump defense strategy out of the mob playbook. So you see these joint defense agreements in organized crime cases and street gang cases. But what they allow lawyers to do is to coordinate so that all of everything that's said is protected by attorney-client privilege. What they also allow, though, is for the defendants to get their story straight, to make sure that everybody's on the same page. The other significance of this is it means that Trump understands that his interests are allied with Manafort's, which I think makes a pardon even more likely.
But it's collusion. This is a separate
You mean
form of
legal
pardon?
collusion.
Well, no, legal collusion between Paul Manafort and Donald Trump. And correct me if I'm wrong, Paul, but in very few of these cases does one of the possible defendants have the ability to pardon the other defendant.
right.
You're being sarcastic.
I am being sarcastic.
I have a theory, by the way.
so-
I'm not a lawyer. I say, admit it, Paul. You're the expert. I get the feeling that somewhere down the line in 19, that would be next year, when he has to decide whether to run for election or not, the big question before the president is, are you going to protect your family with pardons and kill the chance of getting reelected or not?
Yes.
And you're going to make that decision. Thank you, David Corn. Thank you, Paul Butler. Up next.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.